The sky burned with streaks of fire. Ships were falling. Not human ships, alien ships, small, fast scouts with sleek silver hulls, breaking through the atmosphere like glowing meteors. People on the ground stared up in silence. Some screamed, some prayed, some pulled out their phones to record the impossible sight. High above the earth, hidden behind the clouds, something larger waited. Something darker. The narrator was among them, one of the watchers from orbit. His species had crossed galaxies to reach this blue planet. For years they had tracked it from afar. The humans looked primitive through distant scans. Old technology, nuclear weapons, aircraft that could barely scratch the edge of space. Their cultures fought endlessly, divided by borders, beliefs, and pride. They seemed weak, so the Council had declared Earth an easy conquest, a new world for their empire. The fleet was sent to claim it. The narrator, a young officer, had been eager to watch. He had believed the promises. A simple war, a quick victory. Humans would bow like every species before them, but as dusk settled over Earth, he began to see things that made his chest tighten with unease. The first hook came in sound. Human drums. Loud, thunderous beats rising from cities below. Not war. Drums in the ancient sense, but the steady rhythm of machines and engines. Tanks rolled through streets, jets screamed across the skies, soldiers marched in perfect lines beneath banners of red, blue, and gold. The humans were not running. They were not begging. They were preparing. They knew, the narrator whispered. Inside his vessel, his voice trembled. They were waiting for us, his commander laughed. They are only acting brave. When they see our power, their courage will break. But as the alien officer stared down, he was not so sure. From orbit, the aliens launched their first test. A beam of light slashed through the clouds, aimed at a barren stretch of desert. The ground melted into glass. The shockwave rippled across the land. It was a demonstration, a warning. The fleet expected panic. Yet instead of fleeing, humans gathered near the edges of the destroyed zone. Military trucks lined up. Men and women in uniform studied the crater, calm and focused. Drones lifted into the air to scan the site. They were already planning countermeasures. Why are they not afraid? The narrator thought. His hands tightened. Around the control rail, the humans' response was quick. From the desert rose a weapon, tall and sharp like a tower. At first the aliens laughed, thinking it was some primitive missile battery. Then the tower split open. Light burst from its heart. A spear of energy shot into the sky, piercing clouds, nearly touching orbit. The alien fleet scattered in alarm. "It cannot be," the commander growled. "They should not have this technology." But they did. As night fell, the first true clash began. Alien cruisers descended through the atmosphere, black silhouettes blotting out the stars. Cities below flickered with lights, power grids glowing like nervous systems preparing for war. The narrator's ship held position, watching, recording. Then came the sound again. This time, not drums, not machines, voices, human voices carried on radio waves pushed out into the air for all to hear. Broadcasts in 100 languages. Some shouted warnings, some sang anthems, some told stories of defiance. The aliens listened with confusion. Why waste time with noise? But the narrator understood something chilling. The voices were not for the aliens, they were for each other. Humanity was speaking to itself, binding its scattered billions together with words of steel. In the city of Warsaw, tanks lined the streets. Soldiers pressed their faces against rifles, their eyes hard as stone. In New York, aircraft thundered into the night sky, carrying missiles locked onto alien signatures. In Beijing, underground bunkers opened to reveal warheads long hidden from the world. Across Africa, South America, and the Middle East, militias and armies, rivals and enemies, stood side by side with one purpose. The humans were uniting. The narrator felt his chest tighten again. His species had never seen this before. Other civilizations fell apart when threatened. They splintered, divided, surrendered, but here, under the shadow of invasion, the humans did the opposite. They rose. The first battle was chaos. Over the Atlantic Ocean, human jets swarmed the alien cruisers. Their weapons were primitive compared to alien cannons, yet the pilots fought with terrifying skill. They flew dangerously close, weaving through plasma fire, dropping missiles in patterns the alien computers could not predict. The alien fleet destroyed many, but for each jet that fell, 2 more appeared. Their bravery was unsettling. They fought, not to win, but to hurt, not to survive, but to bleed the enemy. And it was working. The narrator watched as a cruiser, massive, armored, unstoppable, suddenly tore apart in flames. Not from alien error, from humans. A single pilot had rammed his jet directly into the engine core, sacrificing himself to take down the ship. The narrator's commander roared in disbelief. Madness, pure madness. But the young officer whispered, "The truth. No, it is courage." On the ground, the battle raged just as fiercely. Alien soldiers landed near London, their armor gleaming under streetlights. They expected terror. Instead, they found barricades, civilians with rifles, police forces armed with whatever they had, and soldiers waiting in alleys, shadows, rooftops. Gunfire rattled through the night. Explosions tore through narrow streets. The aliens were stronger, faster, more advanced, but the humans refused to stop. They fought in every building, on every block, turning the city into a trap. The narrator watched footage with wide eyes. An alien squad advanced through a market street, weapons raised. Suddenly the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the road. A moment later, fire rained from windows, and the squad fell one by one. The narrator shivered. The humans did not fight fair. They fought to win. Hours passed. Smoke rose across continents. The alien fleet had expected a swift conquest. Instead, they found themselves locked in a war that refused to bend. The narrator sat alone in the observation deck, staring at Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from space. Blue oceans, green lands, soft clouds. But he knew the truth now. That peace was an illusion. Beneath the surface burned a fire unlike anything his people had faced. His mind returned to the pilot who had rammed the cruiser, to the civilians who fought with rifles against soldiers in armor, to the voices on the radio, singing and shouting and refusing silence, and the thought formed, cold and heavy. We may not win this. When dawn broke, the world looked scarred. Cities smoked, oceans shimmered with wreckage. Alien ships drifted, broken across the skies, yet humanity was still standing. In every shadow, in every corner, they were preparing for the next strike. They were not weaker. They were not afraid. And, for the first time in his life, the narrator felt fear. He whispered into the empty chamber, "I witnessed humanity in battle. And I knew we never stood a chance." The ocean boiled with fire. That was the first thing the narrator saw when the alien fleet opened its attack. From orbit, the great cruisers tilted their massive cannons toward Earth, and with a thunderclap of energy, they unleashed their power. Bolts of plasma, glowing like miniature suns, tore through the clouds and slammed into the Atlantic. The water erupted in towering pillars of steam. The shockwaves rolled outward, smashing ships, battering coastlines, shattering glass across cities thousands of kilometers away. The commander smiled. Now they will understand who rules the stars, but the narrator did not smile. His eyes stayed fixed on the blue planet below. Through the haze of smoke and boiling water, he could still see movement. He could still hear the strange, steady heartbeat of machines and voices that refused to die. This was supposed to be the first strike, the crushing blow that ended resistance before it could begin. Instead, it felt like the opening of something far more dangerous. The second volley came moments later. Alien cannons aimed at human cities: London, Tokyo, Washington, Beijing, a dozen more, each one marked as a target on the glowing tactical screens of the flagship. The commander gave the order, and fire rained down. Buildings crumbled. Roads split open. Flames reached into the night sky. From space, it looked like the world itself was breaking apart. Yet amid the firestorm, the narrator's senses picked up something unexpected. Missiles, hundreds of them, firing from silos hidden beneath mountains, deserts, and oceans. The humans had waited for this. They had prepared. Nuclear warheads streaked upward like vengeful spears. The alien fleet moved to intercept. Defensive beams lashed out, vaporizing many warheads before they could reach orbit, but not all. Some missiles detonated high in the atmosphere, creating electromagnetic waves that scrambled alien targeting systems. Others were intercepted too late, fragments ripping into alien hulls with brutal force. The commander snarled. "How can they resist us with such crude weapons?" The narrator swallowed hard. Crude, yes, but deadly. The humans did not fight with elegance. They fought with fury. Over the city of Tokyo, the real horror began. An alien cruiser descended low, its shadow covering entire districts. Its cannons rotated, preparing to wipe out what remained of human defenses. Sirens wailed through the streets. Civilians ran for shelter. Soldiers aimed their rifles upward, knowing they were useless. And then, from the rooftops, a new sound split the night. Missile trails, dozens of them. Portable launchers hidden on skyscrapers, small, almost pathetic compared to the cruiser's armor. But they struck with perfect timing, hitting weak points. Along the underbelly, explosions rippled across the hull. The cruiser staggered before it could recover. Human jets screamed into the sky, releasing their payload at point-blank range. The alien ship groaned like a wounded beast. Metal tore. Fire bled from its engines, and then, with a thunderous roar, the cruiser fell. It collapsed onto the city it had tried to destroy, crushing blocks beneath its weight, but also dying in the process. From the smoke and fire, human voices rose in defiance, cheers, battle cries, shouts of triumph. The narrator trembled, his commander raged. The first strike had not broken the humans. It had only awakened them. Across the planet, similar scenes unfolded. In Moscow, alien troops landed, expecting to march unopposed. Instead, they found the streets already lined with barricades, soldiers and civilians together, wielding rifles, Molotov cocktails, even sharpened metal pipes. They fought with desperation, and that desperation made them terrifying. In Cairo, alien drones swept over the desert, searching for hidden bases. But the desert itself turned against them. Camouflaged artillery opened fire, guided by human spotters, who knew the sands better than any machine. Drones fell from the sky like burning birds. In South America, entire villages vanished into the forests, leaving traps behind. Alien patrols entered thinking they had found easy prey, only to be caught in ambushes, where every tree, every shadow, hid a human ready to strike. The narrator saw the reports streaming in, casualties mounting, ships lost, troops wiped out. This was no quick conquest. This was war. The commander refused to admit it. "Press harder," he ordered. "Crush them before they rise any higher." And so the fleet pushed forward. More bombardments, more landings, more fire. But the harder they struck, the stronger humanity seemed to become. The narrator began to notice something strange. Human responses were not random. They were coordinated. Armies from different nations, once enemies, were working together. He watched live footage of American pilots flying alongside Chinese squadrons, Russian tanks rolling beside German ones, African militias sharing supplies with European soldiers. No species had ever done this before. Conquest always divided, always splintered. But humans were different. Under fire, they fused into something greater. They should be breaking apart. the narrator whispered. Instead, they are uniting. His commander ignored him, but the truth was undeniable. The next blow came from space. Alien ships regrouped, in low orbit, preparing a final decisive strike. The plan was simple: overwhelm Earth with concentrated fire until nothing remained standing. But as the fleet lined up, the humans struck first. From hidden bases beneath the ocean, massive submarines surfaced. Their hatches opened, releasing swarms of ballistic missiles into the sky. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. A wave of fire that rose higher and higher until the stars themselves seemed to fall. The alien fleet panicked. Weapon systems overloaded, trying to intercept the storm. Some missiles were shot down. Many more were not. Explosions rippled through the fleet. Ships buckled, their hulls cracking under the relentless assault. The narrator clung to his seat as his own ship shook violently. Warning alarms screamed through the corridors. Crew members shouted. For the first time, the narrator heard something new in their voices: fear. One ship broke formation, then another, then another. The proud alien fleet, once so certain of victory, was beginning to scatter. The commander screamed at them through comms. Hold your positions, do not retreat. But fear spread faster than orders. From the flagship's observation deck, the narrator looked down at Earth again. The planet burned, yes. Cities smoldered. Millions had died. Yet the world was still, alive, still fighting, and the humans were not retreating. They were pushing forward with fury that no firestorm could extinguish. The narrator realized the truth then. The first strike was supposed to break humanity. Instead, it had revealed what humanity truly was: a predator, a survivor, an enemy that could never be tamed. Hours later, silence fell over the battlefield. The alien fleet limped back to high orbit, damaged and shaken. On the ground, smoke curled into the sky. Streets lay in ruins. Countless lives had been lost. Yet from those ruins rose new defenses, new lines of soldiers, new voices carried on. The wind. The narrator stood at the observation window, his reflection pale and shaken. His commander stormed past him, barking orders, clinging to the belief that victory was still certain. But the narrator knew better. He had seen the eyes of human soldiers through the smoke, eyes that burned with something his people did not understand, something his people feared, and with a quiet, shaking voice, he said the words that no alien wanted to hear. We have made a mistake. Blood ran in the rain. That was the first thing the narrator saw when he looked down at Earth during the ground war. Streets were flooded not just with water, but with smoke, fire, and the red stain of battles that never seemed to end. Cities had turned into war zones, farmlands into fortresses, forests into traps. The alien fleet had sent down its finest soldiers, warriors in armored suits, bred for combat, carrying plasma rifles that could melt steel. They were supposed to cut through human armies like blades through paper. They had trained for every scenario, every defense, every known tactic in the galaxy, but they had not trained for humans. And that mistake was costing them everything. The first battle the narrator witnessed on the ground took place in a ruined city. The sky was dark, thick with smoke. Rain poured down, hissing as it struck fires that still burned in collapsed buildings. Alien squads moved through the streets, their footsteps heavy, their visors glowing faint green in the night. They moved cautiously. Every shadow felt dangerous. Every alley whispered a threat. Then, from the broken windows of a collapsed building, rifles cracked. Not plasma fire, human fire. Old primitive weapons that should not have been effective against armor. Yet the shots were precise, aimed at weak joints, at visors, at exposed cables. 2 alien soldiers fell instantly, their armor sparking. The rest of the squad fired back, plasma blasts tearing the building apart. Bricks exploded, walls collapsed. The humans should have been crushed. But when the smoke cleared, the soldiers were gone. And then the ground itself seemed to open. From a hidden tunnel, humans poured out, throwing grenades, firing rifles, striking fast, and vanishing back into the dark. The aliens screamed in anger. They were stronger, yes. Faster, yes. But the humans were shadows. They never fought head-on. They never stayed where you expected them. Every corner hid an ambush. Every ruin was a trap. The narrator whispered, "They fight like predators." In the trenches outside Paris, the rain turned mud into rivers of filth. Alien soldiers dug in, confident their superior weapons would hold the line. They built plasma barriers, strong enough to burn anything that touched them. The humans studied these defenses for hours, sending scouts crawling through the mud like ghosts. They watched, they learned, they adapted, and then at night they struck. The rain masked their movement. Their boots made no sound against the mud. Crawling under wire, slipping through shadows, they reached the trenches before the aliens even knew they were there. Knives, silent gunshots, explosions timed to detonate all at once. By the time the alarm was raised, half the alien defenses were already gone. The rest fell into chaos, trying to fire in every direction at enemies they could not see. The narrator watched from a drone above, his chest tight. These were not orderly battles. They were storms of terror. Humans turned war into something personal, something intimate. They were not just soldiers. They were hunters. The worst came in the forests of South America. Alien patrols pushed through thick jungle, cutting paths with plasma blades. Their scanners picked up heat signatures, but everything in the jungle gave heat. Birds, snakes, insects. The air itself was alive. Then the first trap snapped shut. A patrol stepped into a clearing. The ground erupted. Spikes, coated in fire, launched upward. Soldiers fell, impaled. Others tried to retreat, but the trees themselves moved. Branches fell. Cables whipped tight, pulling soldiers into hidden pits, and then the humans came. Faces painted black and green, weapons wrapped in leaves. They rose from the jungle itself, firing, striking, vanishing. The narrator's hands shook as he watched. This was not war as his people knew it. This was survival, primal and merciless. The aliens had thought themselves hunters. But here, in the jungle, they were prey. The commander refused to admit the truth. He barked orders, demanded reinforcements, promised that victory was still certain, but the reports kept arriving. Squads wiped out, outposts destroyed, patrols that never returned. The humans fought with weapons that should not have worked, yet somehow they always found the weak spot. A single bullet into a visor, a single bomb hidden under a road, a single knife between armor plates. They had no shame in their tactics, no hesitation. They fought dirty, they fought clever, and they fought with a will that refused to break. One night, the narrator saw something he would never forget. An alien squad cornered a group of human soldiers in a ruined subway station. Trapped, low on ammo, the humans had no chance. The aliens closed in, confident of an easy kill. Then the humans charged, not away from death, into it. They threw themselves forward, screaming, firing, stabbing. They fought with fists, with broken weapons, with sheer fury. One detonated his last grenade while still holding an alien's throat. Another used his own body to shield his comrade. When it ended, every human lay dead. But so did every alien. The narrator could not look away. "They are not afraid of death," he whispered. His voice trembled. "They welcome it if it means taking us with them." His commander glared. "Enough of this weakness. They will fall." But deep inside, the narrator knew it was a lie. Day after day, the war dragged on. The aliens had better weapons, better armor, better training. But none of it mattered in the trenches, in the alleys, in the shadows. Humans bent every rule, shattered every expectation. They turned ruined cities into mazes of death. They turned mountains into fortresses. They turned every street, every river, every forest into a weapon. The aliens were bleeding, and the narrator was terrified. He began to notice something else. Humans did not fight alone. Civilians joined soldiers. Farmers joined militias. Children carried supplies to the front. Elders passed down knowledge of the land. It was not just armies resisting, it was entire nations, entire peoples. When one city fell, another rose. When one defense line was broken, another appeared behind it. When one group died, more stepped forward to take their place. It was endless. The narrator stared at his trembling hands. For the first time, he understood what defeat might feel like. Then came the night that changed everything. A massive alien assault was launched against the ruins of Berlin. Thousands of soldiers, dozens of war machines. The plan was to crush the last resistance in Europe. The aliens advanced with confidence, their weapons blazing. Buildings collapsed, roads shattered, but the humans were waiting. From tunnels, from rooftops, from sewers, they struck in perfect unison. Explosives ripped through. Armored vehicles, snipers fired from hidden towers. Entire squads were cut off, surrounded, annihilated. The city burned with fire, but the humans owned the shadows. By dawn, the assault was broken. Thousands of alien troops were dead. The survivors fled in panic, and in the silence that followed, the humans rose from the rubble, bloodied but unbroken. The narrator watched from above, his heart pounding. "We cannot win this," he whispered. His commander said nothing. The shadows had turned against them. The trenches had become graves. And humanity had shown the galaxy that in the darkness of war, they were the masters. The narrator closed his eyes, but the images burned into his mind. The soldiers charging to their deaths, the civilians turning into fighters, the hunters in the jungle. He had witnessed humanity in the shadows, and he knew now that his people were doomed. The night sky was on fire. Alien warships, black and monstrous, hovered like gods above the earth. Their cannons spat rivers of plasma, tearing the heavens apart. Trails of flame crossed the clouds as human jets rose to meet them. The air shook with thunder, explosions flashing so bright they turned night into day. The narrator stood at the viewport of his vessel, staring into the chaos. He had seen wars before, but never like this. The sky itself had become a battlefield, and for the first time, he felt the impossible. His side was losing. The first clash came over the Pacific. An alien dreadnought descended through the atmosphere, its weapons locked on the human fleet below. Massive cannons charged, glowing with lethal light. One shot would have erased an entire carrier group, but before it could fire, a swarm of human jets screamed upward. They darted like arrows, weaving through plasma fire with reckless speed. Their missiles streaked against the dreadnought's shields, exploding in bursts of fire. The dreadnought shook, but held. The aliens laughed. "Their weapons cannot pierce us." Then something unexpected happened. One jet, trailing smoke, turned straight toward the dreadnought. Engines burning, cockpit shattered. It accelerated instead of retreating. The alien crew screamed as the small craft slammed into the ship's shield at full speed. The impact cracked the barrier, and into that crack poured the next wave of missiles. The dreadnought exploded, its burning wreckage falling into the ocean below. The narrator gripped the rail, his heart pounding. "They use their own lives as weapons," his commander growled. "Madness!" But it was working. In the skies over Europe, the same pattern repeated. Alien warships hovered above cities, their cannons raining destruction. Yet the humans fought back with a fury the narrator had never seen. Their jets flew in formations that defied logic, spiraling, diving, pulling maneuvers so sharp they should have torn their aircraft apart. The alien targeting systems could not predict their movements. Missiles found their mark, slamming into engines, tearing ships apart, and when jets were shot down, their pilots often steered their falling machines into the enemy, turning their deaths into one last strike. The aliens had better technology, stronger ships, superior firepower, but the humans had something else, something that could not be measured by scanners or numbers. They had will. Then came the counterattack. From hidden bases across the world, the humans launched their secret weapons. Not sleek, advanced warships, not cutting-edge fighters. Instead, they sent old vessels, outdated and patched together, but filled with upgrades the aliens had never seen. Bombers, once thought obsolete, rose into the sky with payloads designed specifically to crack alien armor. Stealth aircraft, invisible to sensors, slipped through enemy lines and dropped explosives into vulnerable engines. Even cargo planes were converted into makeshift gunships, spewing fire into the night. The aliens mocked their crude designs until those crude designs started winning. The turning point came above New York. The city was already burning, its skyline broken, smoke rising into the night. Alien ships circled overhead, preparing to finish the job. Then, from the horizon came a storm. Hundreds of human aircraft, a coalition of nations flying as one. American jets, Russian bombers, Chinese fighters, European drones. All together, all united. The sky shook as they attacked in unison. Missiles streaked, bombs detonated, fire filled the heavens. The alien fleet fought back with brutal force, plasma tearing through wings and steel. Jets fell like burning comets, but for every one that fell, 2 more surged forward. In the middle of the battle, a single human voice cut through the chaos. On every frequency, "This is Earth. We do not surrender." The narrator felt his chest tighten. That voice was calm, steady, unafraid, and the aliens began to fear. Above the Sahara, another battle unfolded. Alien warships had formed a blockade, cutting off supply lines. It should have been impossible for the humans to break. Yet from the sandstorms rose shapes the aliens did not expect. Human aircraft designed to operate in extreme heat and dust, flying low, hugging the ground. They burst upward into the blockade. At close range, firing missiles directly into exposed underbellies. The blockade shattered in less than an hour. The narrator's hands trembled. "They adapt faster than we can counter." His commander's face was pale, but his voice remained cold. "They cannot keep this up. They will run out of ships." But the narrator knew better. The humans had endless fire in their hearts. Even if they ran out of ships, they would find another way to fight. Then came the unthinkable. The humans took the war into space. From hidden launch sites, rockets tore into the sky, not just satellites or missiles. Actual spacecraft, crude but functional, carrying pilots willing to fight in the void itself. The alien fleet laughed when they first saw the human ships. Small, fragile, outdated. No match for advanced cruisers, but then the battle began. The humans flew with the same madness as in the skies below. They accelerated beyond safe limits, dodged plasma fire with impossible reflexes, and rammed enemy vessels when out of ammunition. Some even carried explosives aboard their own ships, turning themselves into guided bombs. The narrator watched as an alien carrier, massive and unstoppable, suddenly split apart after 3 human ships slammed into it one after another. Silence filled the observation deck. The humans had taken the fight to the stars, and they were winning. The commander raged. "This is not possible. They should be broken. They should be begging for mercy." The narrator whispered, "They are not like us. They do not break." Hours passed. Battles raged across the skies of Earth and beyond. Alien fleets were still powerful, still terrifying, but they were no longer unstoppable. Everywhere the narrator looked, he saw alien wreckage burning in the atmosphere. He saw human aircraft still rising, still fighting, still refusing to fall. The sky, once owned by the invaders, now belonged to no one. It was contested, torn apart, drenched in fire and steel, and for the first time since the invasion began, the narrator felt something impossible. Hope, not for his people, for humanity. When dawn broke, the sky was scarred with smoke trails. Burning. Wreckage rained down into the oceans. Cities were still aflame. Millions were dead. But Earth still stood, and above the ruins, human jets continued to circle, defiant guardians of a world that refused to bow. The narrator pressed his hands against the cold glass of the viewport. His commander stormed out too, furious to speak, but the young officer whispered to himself, "The sky has turned. We are no longer the hunters. We are the hunted." The turning sky had marked the shift. The invaders were no longer certain of victory, and humanity, scarred and bloodied, had proved they could fight not only on the ground, but in the heavens themselves. The narrator closed his eyes and knew the truth. He had witnessed the rise of something unstoppable, and he was afraid. The city was gone, but the humans were still fighting. Smoke rolled through the ruins of what was once a proud capital. Towers lay broken, streets torn open, fires devouring everything in sight. Alien war machines stood among the wreckage, towering shapes of metal and energy, built to erase hope itself. Their weapons glowed, ready to finish what they had started, yet from the shadows, the humans struck. The narrator crouched behind a shattered wall, his eyes fixed on the battle below. His commander had left to join the higher council, but he had stayed, compelled by something he did not fully understand. He wanted to see, he needed to witness how the humans refused to die. Across the ruined square, alien soldiers marched in formation. Their armor was flawless, their weapons humming with deadly light. Against them ragged figures emerged, men and women coated in dust, their faces streaked with blood, carrying rifles that looked pitiful against alien technology. The aliens laughed as they raised their guns. Then the humans opened fire. Bullets sparked harmlessly against shields, but the humans did not stop. They advanced, crouching low, weaving through rubble, firing again and again. Explosions rocked the ground as alien cannons answered, throwing humans into the air like broken dolls. But for every human who fell, another rose, and some did not just fire. Some ran forward with explosives strapped to their bodies, leaping into alien machines and pulling the trigger. The blasts shook the square, tearing armor apart, scattering alien troops. The narrator's hands shook. Why do they not retreat? An older alien officer beside him snarled, because they are insane. But deep inside, the narrator knew that was not true. It was not insanity. It was something stronger. Hours later, the battle spread into the sewers beneath the city. The aliens thought the tunnels were abandoned. They were wrong. Down in the darkness, humans waited. Civilians with knives, soldiers with rifles, engineers with homemade bombs. They moved silently, whispering to one another, guiding each other through the maze. When alien patrols entered the tunnels, the humans struck without hesitation. Grenades lit the dark. Rifles thundered, knives flashed. The tunnels became a trap, a place where advanced scanners and shields meant nothing. The narrator listened to the reports with growing unease. They fight in every shadow, every corner. The older officer hissed, "They cannot hold forever. Their bodies will break." But they did not break. In the mountains of Asia, the humans waged another war. The alien fleet had sent machines to dig into the earth, searching for human strongholds. But in the high passes, where snow fell heavy and winds howled like wolves, the humans waited. Guerrilla fighters ambushed the machines, striking from cliffs and caves. They planted explosives along narrow trails, sending alien walkers tumbling into ravines. Snipers struck from impossible distances, disappearing before counterfire could find them, and when cornered, the humans fought with fists, knives, stones, anything they could hold. The narrator stared at the footage, soldiers freezing, starving, outnumbered, yet still laughing as they launched another ambush. He whispered to himself, they would rather die on their feet than kneel. In the deserts of Africa, the war took a different shape. Alien warships hovered above the sands, their weapons scorching the ground. They thought the open terrain made them safe, but the desert was not empty. Tribes, militias and armies moved across the dunes like shadows. They rode trucks, jeeps, even camels, striking from nowhere and vanishing again. Their weapons were old, their armor patched together, but their tactics were flawless. They struck convoys, sabotaged supply ships, and destroyed communication relays. At night, the desert came alive with fire. Explosions lit the dunes, and human voices echoed across the sands in chants of war. "They fight with the ground itself," the narrator murmured. "They fight with nothing," the older officer spat. "And nothing is what they will have left." But the narrator was not so sure. The humans seemed to need nothing but their will. The war reached even the oceans. Alien carriers hovered above the seas, unleashing storms of fire into coastal cities. Yet from beneath the waves rose human submarines, black shadows sliding silently through the depths. Torpedoes streaked upward, striking alien vessels with thunderous explosions. When the aliens tried to chase them, the submarines vanished into the darkness, waiting to strike again. On the surface, human ships, rusted, battered, outdated, charged alien cruisers with everything they had. Cannons roared, missiles launched, waves churned with fire. Many ships burned, sinking into the sea, but some made it close enough to ram directly into alien hulls, tearing ships apart in suicidal defiance. The narrator pressed his hand against the cold glass of his viewport as he watched an alien cruiser sink beneath the waves. "The ocean belongs to them now," the older officer glared. "The ocean belongs to no one. This world will fall." But the narrator saw the truth. The world had already chosen. Then came the moment that broke the illusion of alien superiority. Single city, believed to be lost, lit up the night with resistance. The aliens had burned it, crushed it, declared it conquered. Yet from its ruins, the humans rose again. Entire families, armed with nothing but courage, threw themselves into the fight. Old men carried rifles, children carried messages through the rubble. Mothers shielded soldiers as they reloaded. The whole city became a weapon, every street a battlefield, every building a fortress. The aliens bombarded it again and again, but the humans would not leave. They held the city, screaming into the night with voices that carried across the world. The narrator could not look away. His chest tightened, his throat dry. They refused to be erased. By the end of the week, the reports were clear. The aliens still held the skies, but they no longer controlled the ground. Every city, every forest, every ocean had become a battlefield where humans refused to yield. The older officer slammed his fist against the table. "They should be broken. They should be begging." But the narrator only whispered, "They are not like us. They will never beg." In the silence of the night, the narrator stood alone on the observation deck. Below him, Earth burned. The humans had lost millions. Their cities were ash, their armies torn apart. Yet the fires of war did not consume them. They carried the fire inside. The narrator thought of the soldier who had rammed his jet into a dreadnought. He thought of the fighters who laughed in the snow. He thought of the families who fought with nothing but knives and courage. It was madness. But it was more than madness. It was will, unbreakable will. And in that moment, the narrator finally understood why his people would lose. Not because their technology was weaker, not because their ships were slower, but because the humans had something that could not be destroyed. Even if every city burned, even if every army fell, humanity itself would fight until the end. The narrator closed his eyes, the truth heavy. In his chest, the war was not about weapons anymore. It was about spirit, and humanity's spirit was unbreakable. The alien commander's voice cracked as he shouted across the War Council, "This is not possible. They should be broken. They should be kneeling. Why are they still fighting?" The chamber was silent. Around him stood officers of the invasion fleet, their faces pale, their eyes uneasy. Screens glowed with live feeds of Earth below, skies filled with smoke, oceans burning, cities crumbling. Yet everywhere humans still rose from the ruins. The commander slammed his fist against the table. "Speak! Someone tell me why this is happening!" No one answered, but in every heart in that chamber, fear had begun to grow. The narrator stood at the edge of the council room, silent as ever, but his mind burned with questions. He had seen it with his own eyes. He had witnessed humans throwing themselves against impossible odds, laughing at death, fighting with nothing but will, and now, for the first time, he saw cracks forming, not in the humans, but in his own people. On the battlefields below, alien soldiers felt it too. In the ruins of a city once filled with light, an alien squad marched through broken streets. Their scanners showed no organized resistance. They expected silence. Instead, they heard drums. From the shadows, human fighters emerged, faces painted with ash, chanting as they charged. Their weapons were simple, their armor almost non-existent, yet their voices shook the air. The aliens fired, cutting many down. But the humans did not stop. They rushed forward, hurling grenades, firing rifles, leaping onto armored machines with knives and explosives. When the battle ended, the squad was gone. The surviving aliens whispered in their camps that night, "They do not fear us, they do not even fear death." For soldiers trained to believe themselves superior, it was the beginning of doubt. In orbit, fear spread faster. Alien ships still ruled the skies, but victory no longer felt certain. Every day, reports came of more losses. Patrols ambushed, supply, convoys destroyed, carriers crippled by suicidal attacks, and worse than the losses was the unpredictability. The humans did not fight with logic. They fought with chaos. One day they struck in the mountains, the next in the oceans, the next from tunnels beneath cities. They seemed to appear everywhere, impossible to anticipate, impossible to control. The fleet's commanders argued endlessly, their strategies collapsing under the weight of human defiance. "They are not following patterns," one officer said. "They are not supposed to," another whispered. "They fight to kill, not to survive." The narrator watched their debates and felt the tension rising. The fear was spreading like fire in dry grass. The breaking point came with a single broadcast. The humans had hacked into alien communication systems. Across every ship, every station, every camp, a voice filled the air. It was human. Rough, tired but steady. "You came to our world thinking we would kneel. You thought your fire would erase us. You thought your machines would crush us. But you were wrong. This is our world. We will fight for every street, every mountain, every drop of ocean. You may kill us, but you will never defeat us." The words echoed in the minds of every alien soldier. Some scoffed, some cursed, but many felt something colder: fear. On the ground, alien soldiers began hesitating. They entered villages expecting submission, only to be met with hidden traps. They patrolled highways, only to be ambushed by farmers with rifles. They surrounded schools, only to be driven back by crowds of civilians throwing firebombs. They were trained to fight armies. They were not trained to fight an entire planet that refused to surrender. One squad leader recorded his fears in a private log. "Every shadow holds an enemy. Every sound hides an attack. We are not fighting soldiers anymore. We are fighting humanity itself." When that log spread across the fleet, morale broke further. The narrator returned to the observation deck that night. Below, Earth still burned. But among the smoke, fires of defiance glowed bright. He had once thought of humans as fragile. Now, he saw them as unshakable. Behind him, young officers whispered nervously, "Did you see the footage from the Sahara? A single platoon of humans wiped out an entire column. They should not be capable of this. They are demons. They fight like they want to die." The narrator turned to them slowly. "They fight like they want to live. That is the difference." The young officers fell silent, their faces pale. The fear reached the highest levels. In the great chamber of the Fleet Council, commanders argued with trembling voices. We must retreat and regroup. No, if we retreat, they will follow. They will believe they can win. They already believe they can win. The words hung heavy in the air. For the first time, the aliens admitted the truth aloud. Humanity believed it could win, and that belief was more dangerous than any weapon. The narrator returned to his quarters, but sleep would not come. Images burned in his mind, jets slamming into dreadnoughts, fighters charging through fire, civilians turning ruins into fortresses. He had been raised to believe in alien superiority, but superiority meant nothing against will, and humanity's will was unbreakable. For the first time he felt it himself, not just fear, dread. The next morning, the commander summoned him. "You have seen their battles," the commander growled. "You have studied their tactics. Tell me, officer, what are they?" The narrator hesitated. His throat tightened. His mind screamed for caution. But at last he spoke the truth. "They are what we fear most. They are impossible to conquer." The commander's eyes narrowed. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Then perhaps it is we who should fear the end." That single admission was enough. The war was far from over. Battles still raged across the earth and the skies above. But the aliens were no longer certain, and in war, certainty was power. The humans had it. The aliens had lost it. The narrator stood at the viewport again, watching Earth below. He whispered into the silence, words meant for no one but himself. "The enemy is not afraid of us anymore. We are afraid of them." And in that moment, he knew the war had already changed forever. The commander's fist smashed against the war table, splitting the metal surface. "Silence! You disgrace yourselves with fear. We are the superior race. We do not retreat, we do not bend, yet you sit here trembling like prey." Around him, the chamber of the alien high command was filled with arguing voices. Officers shouted over one another, their words sharp with panic. Holographic screens flickered with scenes of burning cities, downed warships, shattered patrols. Humanity's defiance blazed on every feed, and for the first time since the invasion began, unity was gone. The narrator stood at the edge of the chamber, his heart pounding as the voices grew louder. One admiral slammed his clawed hand on the table. "We must consolidate, retreat to orbit and bombard the planet until nothing remains alive. Their resistance is born from survival. Remove their chance to survive and they will crumble." Another general shouted back, "Fool! Did you not see what happened in New York? We bombarded it until the ground split open, yet they still fought. If we burn the entire planet, we will inherit only ash. This mission is already failing." The commander roared. "You dare question the mission? This world belongs to us by right." But no one listened. The voices of fear drowned out his anger. Reports poured in, fueling the storm. In the jungles of South America, entire battalions had vanished, swallowed by ambushes. In the frozen north, supply convoys had been torn apart by humans using sleds, and snowmobiles striking like ghosts before vanishing into blizzards. In orbit, yet another dreadnought had fallen, rammed by a human shuttle packed with explosives. Every victory the aliens claimed came at a higher cost. Every defeat cut deeper into their pride. The officers argued, their unity crumbling as quickly as their grip on Earth. The narrator's commander tried to hold them together. "Enough. You shame yourselves. They are a primitive race. Their resistance is nothing but chaos. Chaos can be crushed. All it requires is order, strength, discipline." But even as he spoke, his own officers exchanged nervous glances. His words sounded hollow. The truth was clear. Order and discipline had not broken the humans. Firepower had not broken them. Terror had not broken them. Nothing had broken them. That night, The narrator walked the halls of the command vessel. Everywhere he went, he heard whispers. They say a unit refused orders. I heard an entire ship pulled back from battle without permission. They fear the humans more than they fear our own commanders. The narrator's chest tightened. He had never heard such words among his people. Obedience was sacred. Defiance was unthinkable. But the humans had changed everything. In a dark corridor, he overheard two young officers arguing in hushed tones. This war cannot be won. You saw the reports. Silence. Speak such words and you'll be executed. Executed for speaking truth. The humans will kill us all before our commanders do. The narrator stepped back into the shadows, his blood cold. Fear was no longer confined to soldiers in the field. It was spreading through the veins of command itself. The next council was worse. Admirals openly accused one another of failure. Generals blamed commanders for reckless strategies. Some demanded retreat, others demanded extermination, and some demanded surrender. Surrender! The words struck the chamber like a thunderclap. The commander's face twisted with rage. "Surrender is not a word of our people," he thundered. "Who dares speak it?" But the damage was done. The whisper had been spoken aloud, and it lingered in every mind. The narrator watched their faces. He saw pride collapse. He saw loyalty waver. He saw fear becoming stronger than discipline. The command was shattering. Meanwhile, humanity grew stronger. On Earth's surface, resistance movements were uniting. Once scattered, now they fought as one. Nations that had once warred with each. Others stood together, sharing weapons, soldiers, and secrets. Their will, once fragmented, had become a single spear pointed at the invaders. Alien intelligence officers reported this with trembling voices. They are no longer fighting as tribes. They are fighting as one species, one commander hissed. Then they are more dangerous than ever. The council fell into silence. For once, no one disagreed. The narrator's commander gathered his inner circle that night. His voice was low, almost desperate. They will not listen. They have forgotten who we are. The council fractures, the fleet hesitates, the soldiers doubt. If this continues, our mission will collapse. Another officer leaned forward. Then what do we do? The commander's eyes burned with fury. We do what our ancestors always did. We rule through fear. If the council doubts, we crush their doubt. If soldiers hesitate, we punish hesitation. We will not allow weakness. But the narrator knew punishment would not save them. Fear was already loose. It could not be chained again. The breaking point came during a battle above the Atlantic. A massive fleet had been assembled to crush human resistance once and for all. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, carriers, an armada meant to drown the planet in fire. But when the battle began, something happened that no alien expected. Two ships broke formation. At first, the commanders believed it was an error, but then those ships turned away, retreating. The humans saw the gap instantly. Their fighters surged through, striking at the exposed flank. Missiles roared, explosions lit the sky. An entire cruiser was torn apart before the fleet could recover. The retreat of two ships had cost the aliens hundreds of lives, and it proved one terrifying truth. Their command was no longer unshakable. The council chambers erupted in chaos. Cowards! Traitors! They feared the humans more than they feared us. If one ship retreats, more will follow. The commander's rage could not silence them anymore. His shouts were drowned by arguments, accusations, and fear. The narrator watched, in silence, realizing the truth. The humans had not just broken their fleets, they had broken their unity. The narrator stood alone at the viewport later, staring at the planet below. Humanity's cities still burned, their oceans still boiled, their skies were still scarred. Yet from those ruins, from that suffering, their strength only grew. And above, the once mighty invasion fleet fractured piece by piece. He whispered to himself, his voice trembling, "They are tearing us apart without even stepping into this chamber." The shattered command was the first true victory for humanity, and the narrator knew what would come next. The aliens would no longer fall to firepower alone, they would fall to fear. The sky above Earth burned brighter than the sun. Alien warships filled the heavens, blotting out the stars. Their cannons glowed with fire, ready to erase the planet in a final strike. Below, Earth's surface lay scarred and broken, cities reduced to rubble, oceans churning with wreckage, mountains scarred by fire. It should have been the end, but the humans were waiting. The narrator stood at the viewport of his command vessel, his chest tight with dread. He could feel it in the air, the tension, the desperation, the fear clawing at every alien aboard. The invasion fleet was preparing for one last push, one final attempt to crush humanity, yet he knew the truth. It was not humanity that stood on the edge of destruction. It was them. The humans had gathered everything they had left, from hidden bases, from ruined cities, from every shattered corner of the world. They came. Pilots climbed into battered jets, soldiers loaded their weapons, civilians carried bombs and rifles, ready to fight beside the armies. It was not an army anymore. It was an entire species. The humans had named it simply the Last Stand. The alien commander gave his speech to the fleet, his voice booming through every channel. This is our final strike. You will crush their spirit. You will erase their defiance. You will show the galaxy that resistance is death. But even as he spoke, the narrator saw the faces of the officers around him. Their jaws were tight, their eyes unsteady. They know, longer believed, and when belief is gone, power is already lost. The battle began over the ruins of Europe. Human jets screamed into the skies, rising in swarms, missiles blazing. Alien ships descended to meet them, plasma fire tearing through the air. Explosions lit the sky like endless thunder, wreckage falling in flames. On the ground, tanks rolled through the rubble. Soldiers charged streets lined with fire, dragging wounded comrades refusing to stop. Civilians turned ruined homes into strongholds, firing from windows, hurling firebombs at armored machines. The world itself had become a weapon. The narrator's hands shook as he gripped the railing. They are fighting everywhere at once, his commander snarled. Then we kill them everywhere at once. But even as he said it, he looked afraid. Over the oceans, the battle turned. Alien carriers hovered above the waves, cannons raining destruction. But from beneath the surface, human submarines surged upward, firing torpedoes into exposed hulls. Ships exploded, fire raining into the sea. Human destroyers, rusted and battered, charged alien cruisers head-on. Cannons roared, waves rose high, and when their ammunition was gone, some captains turned their ships into rams, slamming into alien vessels with suicidal fury. The narrator whispered, "They would rather sink with us than let us win." In the skies, the humans unleashed their final weapon. From secret launch sites, rockets blasted into space, crude, fragile, untested, but filled with soldiers willing to die. They carried nuclear warheads, explosives, and above all, determination. They rose into orbit, colliding with alien cruisers in explosions that shook the heavens. Whole dreadnoughts were ripped apart, their burning hulks crashing into the atmosphere. The alien fleet faltered. For the first time, the humans had pushed the war beyond Earth. On the ground, the humans refused to yield. Alien walkers stormed through the ruins of London, their cannons blasting buildings apart. But humans swarmed them, climbing onto their armor, planting bombs, tearing the machines down with sheer numbers. In the deserts, militias struck from the dunes, racing on jeeps and trucks, firing rockets into alien tanks. In the mountains, guerrilla fighters rained fire from cliffs. In the forests, ambushes turned patrols into slaughter. Everywhere the aliens went, the humans were waiting. It was no longer war. It was resistance made flesh. The narrator watched as reports flooded in. Alien units overrun, warships destroyed, officers refusing to obey orders. His commander screamed at the council, "Hold the line! We are superior! We will not be defeated by animals!" But the council was silent, their faces pale, their voices gone. They knew the war was lost. The final blow came in orbit. A massive alien dreadnought, the flagship of the invasion, prepared its ultimate weapon, a cannon large enough to burn half the planet in one strike. The commander declared victory before it fired, but the humans had seen it. A squadron of fighters broke through the fleet, weaving through fire, missiles streaking. Most were shot down, burning in the void. But one made it through. A single, battered fighter. Its pilot spoke across every channel, his voice steady. "This is Earth. We fight until the end." Then he rammed his craft into the weapon's core. The dreadnought exploded, fire consuming the sky. The blast ripped through half the alien fleet, tearing ships apart, scattering wreckage across the stars. The humans below cheered, their voices rising like thunder across the planet. The invasion was broken. Silence filled the alien command ship. The commander stood frozen, his mouth open, his eyes wide. His power was gone, his fleet destroyed, his army shattered. The narrator turned to him, his voice cold and certain. "It is over. They will never kneel. They will never surrender. And now we are the ones who must fear." The commander collapsed into his chair, his pride crushed, his spirit broken. The war was not finished in that moment. Battles still raged. Skies still burned. But the tide had turned forever. Humanity had survived. Humanity had fought back. Humanity had won. The narrator stood at the viewport, watching Earth below. It was scarred. It was broken. But it was alive. And he whispered the words he never thought he would say. "We never stood a chance against them.